From the weakest grade 3 sorcerer to the monster standing at the top of the new era, these are all 16 students in Jujutsu Kaisen explained and ranked. Starting at the very bottom, we've got Mai Zenin. She's probably the most tragic example of just how cruel the Jujutsu world can be. To understand Mai, you first have to understand that in this verse, twins are considered a bad omen, because their power is split down the middle. Mai essentially has half a soul, meaning that, just like her twin sister Maki, she was born nerfed from the start. What makes this even more tragic is that her curse technique, construction, is actually overpowered, in theory. Yorozu from the Heian era has the exact same technique, and she's a consistent top 10 pick for most power scalers. I mean, the perfect sphere she created using this technique, combined with her domain expansion's sure-hit effect, genuinely threatened Sukuna. If he wasn't using Mahoraga to adapt, things could have gotten very ugly. But for Mai, it's a completely different story. Her cursed energy reserves are so low compared to the average sorcerer that she can only create a single bullet per day, and even that gives her nosebleeds. I mean, at that point, you start wondering why not just use a normal gun? And that's exactly what she does. She constantly carries a cursed revolver imbued with her cursed energy. She even used a real sniper rifle with real bullets against Kenjaku during the Shibuya incident, which should tell you just how little cursed energy she actually has. Mai's a grade 3 sorcerer, which is basically the default rank for a student. Honestly, the only thing she really has going for her is her academic ranking. She has 9 points out of 10, tying her with Mechamaru as the top second-year students across both schools in terms of academics. But let's be real, academic scores alone aren't enough to earn her a higher spot on this list. She can barely use her curse technique, and she never had the drive to improve because she never wanted to be a sorcerer in the first place. Ironically, her greatest feat was sacrificing herself to create the split soul katana for Maki. Moving on to number 15, I'm about to piss off a quarter of the fandom because this spot goes to Miwa, the GOAT. Memes aside though, I actually have solid reasons for putting her here. First, there's the glaze. Unlike most of the other students on this list, Miwa's just a normal person who got into Jujutsu sorcery to make money for her brothers. She doesn't have an innate technique, so she relies on New Shadow style, a set of sword skills specifically designed for people with no natural talent. And to be fair, she's actually good at it. For example, she successfully exercised several curses in a single sword stroke during the night parade of 100 demons. She can also use Simple Domain to create a small circle around herself that automatically counterattacks. That said, Simple Domain is almost entirely defensive, and when you're mid, it really only works against fodder. Basically, Miwa represents the absolute peak of what an average human without a curse technique can achieve in this world. One last thing worth mentioning is her binding vow. During the Shibuya incident, Miwa vowed to never swing a sword again in exchange for massively amping up her strike against Kenjaku. And although Kenjaku blocked it, you really can't hold that against her. Kenjaku's just one tier below Gojo and Sukuna. After making that binding vow, Miwa was forced to retire as a swordsman, which was her only way of channeling New Shadow style in the first place. That's why, even though the next student is just a first year from Kyoto High with barely any screen time, I'm putting him above Miwa at number 14. That student is Arata Nida. Despite his little screen time, I've got a lot of respect for Arata, because while he's not a fighter, he is an excellent support character. His curse technique, Painkiller, allows him to stop existing injuries from getting any worse. Basically, he can't heal wounds like a reverse curse technique user, but he can freeze them in time to prevent further bleeding or infection, while also numbing the pain. And during the Shibuya incident, this ability was absolutely clutch. He was the one who patched up Yuji when his depression stats were at their highest, and in hindsight, he's also the reason Nobara survived. Honestly, I almost feel bad putting him at 14. Even Mechamaru, who tried to keep most of the Kyoto students away from Shibuya, was confident that Arata would be useful, and he was completely right. Before we continue, do me a quick favor, guys. We're really close to hitting 100,000 subscribers and getting that silver play button, so if you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. Next up at number 13, we have Momo Nishimiya. Even though I've placed this third-year student all the way down at number 13, Momo's actually very skilled at what she does. We don't know her official grade, but Panda speculated that she's around semi-grade 2 level. Her curse technique, tool manipulation, allows her to telekinetically control her broom. It sounds simple, but it gives her something you don't see very often in Jujutsu Kaisen: flight and high-speed scouting. For example, during the night parade of 100 demons, she was the one calling out the positions of cursed spirits for her fellow classmates to exercise. That said, she's not built for higher level fights. Most of her abilities are geared towards support, and while she can use her broom to generate powerful gusts of cursed energy wind as an offensive move, the scale just isn't there. I guess you could say Momo's a mid-tier sorcerer who knows her limits and plays her role well. Moving on to number 12, we've got the Tokyo third year, Kurara Hoshi. Kurara also doesn't get much screen time, which is honestly a shame, because Gege was absolutely cooking with his curse technique. Love Rendezvous. It's based on constellations, and it's easily one of the top 10 most confusing and creative techniques in the entire series. Here's how it works. Kurara can place star stickers on people, objects, or even cursed energy. There are 5 different stars, all named after the Southern Cross constellation, and while the rules are simple on paper, they're really tricky in practice. You can only move toward another star in a specific fixed order. If you try to skip a star, star, you get stuck. If two things share the same star, they become magnetized and are pulled toward each other. Kirara can even mark himself, though only with one star at a time. He uses this technique to lock opponents in place, force them to crash into heavy objects, and control the entire battlefield by deciding exactly who's allowed to move where. No wonder both Panda and Megumi were completely at his mercy. That said, once Megumi finally outsmarted him, Kirara didn't really have any backup options. All things considered, we don't know Kirara's official grade, and since he doesn't take part in the final battle, it's hard to place him any higher. I mean, sure, he and Wee came in clutch when they teleported Higuruma to safety after he was defeated by Sukuna, but that's basically all he did. Honestly, the only reason he's sitting at number 12 is because of his crazy curse technique and the Hikari cloud. Next up at number 11 is Panda. He's a semi-grade 2 sorcerer, but more importantly, he's an abrupt mutation cursed corpse, the most advanced of his kind. When it comes to his fighting style, Panda fights with his fists that are reinforced by his cursed energy. He wears knuckle bracers to boost his punches, and he's a close-range brawler who can take hits and keep going. And while he doesn't have an innate curse technique, Panda more than makes up for it with the 3 cores inside him, essentially 3 souls. One is his own, one belongs to his brother, and the third to his sister, with each core granting him a different form. First, there's Base Panda, which is balanced and incredibly durable. I mean, he tanked a direct hit from Mechamaru's strongest move, Ultimate Cannon, without taking a scratch. Then there's Gorilla Mode, his brother's core, which massively amps his strength at the cost of rapidly draining cursed energy. Finally, there's Triceratops Mode, his sister's core. It's implied to be the strongest of the 3, but when Panda uses it against Kashimo, Kashimo's lightning destroys him before we can really see what this form is capable of. Unfortunately, that fight with Kashimo completely ruins Panda. His brother's core, his sister's core, and even his base body are destroyed, leaving only his head intact. He's reduced to a chibi panda and loses most of his strength, but at least he survives. In the epilogue, we learn that in the year 2035, 17 years after the final battle against Sukuna, Panda goes dormant and is registered in the Gojo family storage. Taking the number 10 spot is Nobara. Yeah, Nobara actually cracks the top 10. She was grade 3 at the start of the story, though it hasn't been revealed if her grade was changed later on. Her curse technique is the Straw Doll technique, which allows Nobara to attack an enemy's body remotely as long as she has a piece of them. Hair, blood, any body part will do. Nobara mainly uses 2 moves. The first is Resonance, where she attaches part of her enemy to a straw doll and drives a nail into it. The damage transfers directly to the target's body and completely ignores physical durability. She can even hit multiple targets at once if they're connected, like twins or clones. And her resonance feats are just crazy. I mean, she managed to critically hurt Mahito and Sukuna. That's 2 special grades, one of whom is the strongest in history. Her second move is Hairpin. Nobara imbues a nail with cursed energy, stabs it into a surface or target, and detonates it. It's mainly used for clearing fodder, but it's still effective in the right situations. So why is Nobara ranked above Panda and Kirara? Yes, her feats play a big role, but the real reason is Black Flash. Nobara is one of the few sorcerers who can use Black Flash, and as Toto once explained, the difference in understanding cursed energy between those who have landed a Black Flash and those who haven't is the difference between heaven and earth. Because of that, Nobara deserves serious respect, and the Majulo sequel reinforces this. We see an elderly Nobara, now in her 80s, being interviewed by Jujutsu headquarters about Yuji's whereabouts. The fact that Nobara is still relevant in Jujutsu society in her 80s says a lot. It shows that she not only had potential, but recognized it and lived up to it. That alone justifies placing her above every student we've talked about so far. Moving on to number 9, we have Noritoshi Kamo. Kamo's grade is semi-grade 1, the highest grade we've mentioned on this list so far. His curse technique, blood manipulation, is exactly what the name implies. It allows him to control his blood outside his body, harden it into weapons, use it to track enemies, or even pump it through his own veins like a steroid to boost speed and vision. The only downside is that he has to carry blood bags, or he'll run out of blood and die. Kamo was originally the heir to the Kamo clan thanks to his inherited blood manipulation technique. That is, until Kenjaku took over the clan and removed him from that position. After that, Kamo helps Yuji learn the fundamentals of blood manipulation during the month leading up to the final battle. However, when it comes time to actually fight, Kamo himself chooses to protect his family and flee overseas with them instead. And honestly, it probably wouldn't have made much difference if he stayed. The group already had 2 blood manipulation users, Chozo and Yuji. Noritoshi Kamo earns this spot because he's a semi-grade 1 sorcerer, and he played a major role in helping Yuji master blood manipulation in such a short amount of time. And let's not forget he was also very helpful during Maki's fight against Cursed Naoya. That said, I still wouldn't put him above the other semi-grade ones. For example, the student at number 8 is Inumaki. Back when Hanami showed up during the Goodwill event and both Megumi and Noritoshi had to face him, Inumaki was the only one who managed to momentarily restrict Hanami, a special grade curse, using his curse speech. Yes, his curse technique alone earns him the spot. Curse speech is the signature technique of the Inumaki clan, who are basically treated as outlaws within Jujutsu society. But when you look at how toxic the big three families are, maybe the Inumakis are the ones doing something right. Curse speech is very straightforward. You infuse words with cursed energy and force them to come true. Say stop and the target stops. Say explode or sleep and that's exactly what happens. Man, if I had this technique, subscribing wouldn't be optional. The downside is that Inumaki has to constantly watch what he says in everyday life to avoid accidentally cursing someone. That's why he communicates using his own language made up of things like salmon and bonito flakes. Another drawback is the recoil. The stronger the command or the stronger the opponent, the more damage it does to his throat. That's why he always carries throat medicine, because anytime he fights someone significantly stronger than himself, destroying his throat and coughing up blood is basically guaranteed. But even with those drawbacks, Inumaki's feats speak for themselves. Gato acknowledged his potential in JJK0. He sent Hanami flying during the Kyoto Goodwill arc. He cleared an entire district of transfigured humans during the Shibuya incident, and he even made Sukuna stop during the Shinjuku showdown. Because of those feats and his semi-grade 1 status, there's more than enough justification to put Inumaki at number 8. That said, there's still one more semi-grade 1 student who ranks above him, and that student is Kokichi Muda, aka Mechamaru. Because of a heavenly restriction, he was born without a right arm, with paralyzed legs, and a body that constantly felt like it was being stabbed by needles. His skin was so sensitive that it would burn even under moonlight. But in exchange for all that suffering, Kokichi was granted high amounts of cursed energy and the ability to control puppets across the entire country of Japan. Jujutsu High took him in at a young age, and his parents, who were non-sorcerers, were led to believe he had died. Given that situation, it's not hard to understand why Kokichi eventually became a mole for Kenjaku in exchange for a healthy body. For about 90% of his time as a Jujutsu student, Kokichi attended school and went on missions through his main puppet, Mechamaru. In combat, he fought remotely using cursed corpse puppets capable of firing massive blasts like Ultra Cannon and Ultimate Cannon. He even developed mini Mechamarus for communication. And there's Ultimate Mechamaru mode. Absolute. This is the giant armored puppet Kokichi pilots after finally obtaining a healthy body through Mahito's idol transfiguration. With this puppet, he actually manages to keep up with Mahito, and for a brief moment, he even gains the upper hand. But unfortunately, Mahito ultimately wins and kills Kokichi. Before his death, Kokichi also prepared a contingency plan that would activate 3 puppets in the event Satoru Gojo was sealed. He used them to explain the situation and communicate with the sorcerers throughout the Shibuya incident. Those puppets finally ran out of power just as Kokichi told Miwa to find happiness and live a good life. All things considered, there's really no debate here. Kokichi has better feats, better showings, and a higher student ranking than both Inumaki and Kama. That's why he takes the number 7 spot. At number 6, we've got potential man himself, Megumi Fushiguro. He was already a grade 2 sorcerer as a first year and had the highest academic scores among all Tokyo students at 9 out of 10. But of course, the real glaze comes from his 10 shadows technique. And when you really think about it, the hype makes total sense. The only 2 known cases where a user of both the Limitless and the Six Eyes was killed were both caused by a 10 shadows user. 400 years before the main story, the heads of the Zenin clan, who was a 10 shadows user, and the head of the Gojo clan killed each other. And in the present day, Sukuna, using Megumi's body and the 10 shadows, kills Gojo. So yeah, the 10 shadows technique absolutely deserves its gas. And it's easy to see why Sukuna wanted it after experiencing it just once. So what exactly is 10 shadows? The user can summon up to 10 different Shikigami, each with unique abilities. On top of that, Megumi was able to develop an incomplete domain expansion, Chimera Shadow Garden. While it lacked a guaranteed hit, it still allowed him to amplify his technique by around 120% and endlessly spawn Shikigami. He first used it against the Finger Bearer, later to infiltrate Dagon's domain, and also to defeat Reggie Star during the Calling game. And while we still don't know whether Megumi is alive or dead in Modulo, or if he ever fully realized his potential by completing his domain and taming Maharaga, I'm confident he reached at least special grade level. Otherwise, what was the point of Gojo nurturing the next generation? And especially Megumi. I mean, Gojo was basically his adoptive father. And speaking of Maharaga, as much as we joke about it, it's the perfect self-destruct button. In like 99% of cases, you're guaranteed to take your opponent down with you. That's exactly why Megumi almost summoned it against Sukuna early in the series, and why he actually did summon it against Haruta after being severely injured. Maharaga is the ultimate trump card. Unfortunately, Megumi as a character also serves as a metaphor for depression. His lack of conscious resistance against Sukuna in the final battle, at least until he found his will to live again and held Sukuna in place so Yuji could land the finishing blows, led to the wave of potential man slander in the fandom. And while that criticism isn't entirely unfair, the memes have also made people forget just how impressive Megumi was throughout the entire run of Jujutsu Kaisen. So why is he only at number 6? Because we're still speculating about him becoming a special grade based purely on potential. special, and that alone isn't enough to earn him a spot in the top 5. Finally, we've reached the top 5 students, and at number 5, we've got the student with the best academic scores, Aoi Todo, with a perfect 10 out of 10. That makes sense when you remember his IQ was 530,000. Of course he aced every exam. We learned in Chapter 17 that he defeated 5 Grade 1 curses and 1 special grade during the night parade of 100 demons, and he only needed to use his curse technique for the special grade. Speaking of which, Todo's curse technique, Boogie Woogie, is one of the simplest yet most effective abilities in the entire series. When he claps his hands, he swaps the positions of 2 things that possess cursed energy. It sounds basic, but we've all seen how broken it can be, first against Hanami and later against Mahito. And although he loses his arm against Mahito, he later replaces it with a Vibroslap tool, which allows him to swap 50 times in a single second. And that was more than enough for yet another generational performance, this time against Sukuna. As for his grade, Todo is grade 1, just like Meimei, Nanami, and Kusakame. And that makes perfect sense when you consider where his instinct, taste in women, and understanding of cursed energy come from. He was personally trained by Yuki Tsukumo, one of the only 4 special grade sorcerers, and that scar on his face is actually the result of training with her. And Todo being an excellent teacher for Yuji is simply because his own teacher was excellent, which is why it still hurts how Gege handled Yuki's fight against Kenjaku. She almost had him, only for Kenjaku to pull an anti-gravity curse technique out of nowhere. Come on, Gege, you could have at least let her show her domain expansion. But getting back to the rankings, Todo is grade 1, as I mentioned, and while he may or may not have ever reached special grade, it's important to understand how impressive grade 1 already is. This is the highest rank a sorcerer can achieve through normal progression. At number 4, we have Kinji Hikari. Hikari has the lowest known academic score across both schools, a brutal 2 out of 10. He was also suspended after getting into a disagreement with a conservative higher up and beating them up, so he doesn't even have an official grade. But when it comes to power scaling, Hikari is a completely different story. His curse technique, Private Pure Love Train, is applied through his domain expansion, Idle Death Gamble. It's a pachinko-themed game where the goal is to hit a jackpot. Even though the odds are only 0.4%, Hikari's luck lets him hit jackpot after jackpot, and whenever he does, he becomes effectively unkillable for exactly 4 minutes and 11 seconds. His main fights are against Kashimo and Uraume. While we don't get a full conclusion to the latter, we do see Hikari beat Kashimo, the strongest sorcerer from 400 years ago. On top of that, there are multiple instances of top-tier characters just straight up glazing him. Gojo once said that Hikari and Yuta could rival him one day, and Yuta even claimed that Hikari's stronger than him when he's worked up. Now, do I trust Yuta as a power scaling source? Not really. He's too humble. But still, the statement matters. So yeah, even though Hikari's scores are terrible and his official grade is unclear, his domain expansion, luck, and overall scaling more than make up for it. It's also worth mentioning that Hikari does return as a student by the end, and in Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, we learned that there's literally a legal provision named after him. Remember how he always wanted to legalize his underground fight club? Well, it actually happens. And the new law is called the Hikari provision. Now the real question is, why isn't Hikari in the top 3? It's because there's Maki. She takes number 3. And yeah, just hear me out. Maki started as a grade 4, the lowest known rank for a sorcerer, and she was actually the only grade 4 sorcerer ever introduced. And this was, of course, because of the Zenin clan's innate technique, misogyny expansion, which kept her from getting promoted. Even though she could exercise grade 2 curses with no problem, and even though both Gojo and Meimei agreed there was zero reason she shouldn't be at least grade 2, the clan kept holding her back. But why? It was because of her lack of cursed energy. Like we talked about in Mai's part, twins are considered a bad omen, because Jujutsu treats them as a single person. Mai ended up with the cursed technique and most of the cursed energy, while Maki got a strong physical body and barely any cursed energy. This was actually a problem, because it held both of them back. But after Mai sacrifices herself and takes Maki's remaining cursed energy with her, Maki reaches absolute 0 cursed energy. And that's when we see the real Maki. Reaching 0 cursed energy gives Maki a superhuman body of steel, comparable to Toji. We're talking absurd strength and speed, plus heightened senses that let her perceive inorganic matter and detect changes in temperature and air density with perfect accuracy. She immediately pulls an Itachi on the Zenin clan and slaughters everyone. Her father, her uncle Junichi, and Naoya Zenin. All 3 were special grade 1. The power gap is so insane that grade 1 sorcerers basically become fodder to her. Now back to why she's above Hikari. It comes down to one simple question. How does he even beat her? Because Maki has 0 cursed energy, she's treated as an inanimate object. She can't be forcibly trapped inside barriers, and sure hit effects won't track her. And with her Soul Split katana, which ignores physical durability, Hikari's infinite cursed energy during jackpot would be completely irrelevant, since the katana targets the soul. This is just a horrible matchup for Hikari. Maki can outspeed him and land a soul-severing blow before he even starts rolling jackpots. Honestly, I'm still surprised by how much the community lowballs Maki. She dodged Sukuna's world-cutting slash, and Sukuna himself compared her ability to adapt and read attacks to Maharaga. What more do you want her to do? Her performance against Sukuna is already much better than Toji's performance against Teenage Gojo. Both lost, lost, but one died to a teenage Gojo, while the other got acknowledged and glazed by the strongest sorcerer in history. Yeah, from being the only grade 4 ever to getting praised by Sukuna himself is no ordinary feat. By the time of JJK Modulo, Maki's already passed away, but we learned that at some point, she and Yuta did get married. Yeah, they actually got to spend some happy time together. We also find out they had a son named Iori, who turns out to be a full-on power scaler himself. Iori later has 2 children of his own, a daughter named Yuka and a son named Tsurugi, who both are the main protagonists of the sequel. And as expected from Maki and Yuta's grandchildren, they both have broken abilities. Yuka inherits the 10 Shadows technique, yes, meaning she can summon Maharaga. Meanwhile, Tsurugi has a heavenly restriction similar to Maki's, and in the latest chapter, he even awakens Rika through Yuta's ring. One last thing I want to point out here is that the year Yuka is born, 2079, is also the same year her father Iori disappears without a trace, and the same year her grandmother Maki dies. Now, are these events connected, or is it just a coincidence? We can't tell for now, but I just wanted to mention it because I thought it's interesting. Anyway, having said all that about Maki, let's talk about her future husband, who takes the number 2 spot. As a special grade, Yuta's always been portrayed as Gojo's successor, and considering that he eventually becomes the next head of the Gojo clan, I'd say that portrayal was pretty accurate. He has nearly bottomless cursed energy, more than Gojo's, and second only to the King of Curses. His innate technique, Copy, allows him to replicate other people's cursed techniques as long as Rika eats a piece of them first. Rika's the cursed spirit bound to Yuta. She stores copy techniques and cursed tools, serves as the main source of his near infinite cursed energy, and can fully manifest for 5 minutes at a time to boost Yuta to his absolute peak. And thanks to her, Yuta's copied just about every broken technique you can think of. We're talking Inumaki's cursed speech, Uro's sky manipulation, Drew's Shikigami summoning, Angel's technique extinguishment, Sukuna's shrine, and even Kenjaku's brain transplant, which he used to take over Gojo's body for a few minutes. And yes, he also copied Gojo's Limitless and used Unlimited Void against Sukuna. All of that is topped off with his own domain expansion, Authentic Mutual Love. Inside the domain, countless katanas appear, each one linked to a copied cursed technique. He can wield any of them, activate copied techniques without restriction, and stack that with the domain's sure hit effect to guarantee the attack lands. His mastery of reverse curse technique is also top tier, considering he literally killed Yuji and then brought him back to life. To put it simply, Yuta could have been the Gojo of another timeline. Gojo liked to say that both Yuta and Hikari could rival him one day, but when you really look at it, Yuta was the only one who ever truly had a shot at surpassing Gojo. And while we don't know if he ever actually does, what we do know is that even with all this glaze, he's still not number 1 on this list. No, number 1 goes to our boy Yuji, the strongest sorcerer of today. Within just a few months as a first year, Yuji learned Black Flash, Blood Manipulation, Simple Domain, Reverse Curse Technique, Shrine, Domain Expansion, and everything in between. His performances against Mahito and Sukuna were generational, and right now in the Modulo sequel, the portrayal makes it clear that Yuji surpassed both Gojo and Sukuna. I mean, did you see the scale of his dismantle in chapter 20? The impact was larger than Tokyo itself. Yuji also has Blood Manipulation thanks to being a death painting, and he's now as refined with it as Gojo was with Limitless. No, seriously, his convergence and piercing blood are beyond anything we previously thought possible with that technique. It finally explains why the Kamo clan was considered one of the big 3 families, although I doubt any of them ever reached even half of Yuji's current level with Blood Manipulation. And then there's his proficiency with Shrine. At minimum, Yuji is as good as Sukuna with Shrine. When Mahito tries to act out in chapter 22, Yuji uses Dismantle to sever his tongue and fingers right as he's in the middle of casting his domain expansion. It happens instantly and with ruthless efficiency. We also know that he can use Shrine to directly target the soul. Now place that feat next to the sheer scale of his Dismantle in chapter 20, and it's criminal not to put his mastery with Shrine at the same level as Sukuna's. So let's recap. Yuji has fully mastered Sukuna's curse technique and Blood Manipulation. He can use Black Flash on command. He has reverse curse technique, and he has his own domain expansion. Speaking of his domain, he uses it during the climax of the Shinjuku to deliver the final blow to the King of Curses. There's really no other conclusion. Yuji has reached the absolute pinnacle of Jujutsu Kaisen's power system. I might be glazing, but he is the strongest character in the narrative. That's why he's adopted Sukuna's mannerisms. That's why the shadow from his hoodie makes him look like he's wearing a blindfold. Just like Gojo, he's him. But as the saying goes, with great power comes great loneliness. Yuji stopped attending his friends' funerals after Hana's, and that just tells us that our boy is now living with a loneliness that comes from not just being the strongest, but being eternal. As he said, he'll live for another 300 years, and it's very likely he'll live even longer. He has to watch his friends pass away one by one. Honestly, what a twisted way to continue Yuji's character arc. His goal was to die a proper death surrounded by friends, but sadly, it's the exact opposite. At least we know he still has Todo to hang out with, so it's not all bad. Click on this next video where I explain and rank all 19 Colon game players.